And welcome to my channel. In this video, we will discuss about a very interesting topic, that is menstruation cycle, or simply you can say menstrual cycle. So, the basic topics that we will cover in this video are, first of all, we'll talk about the Hypothalamic-Pituitary-Gonadal axis, that is HPG. Then next we'll talk about the Ovarian Cycle, and next we'll talk about the Uterine Cycle. So these are the basic topics that we will cover in this video. So let's start. So let's start with menstrual cycle. So as we all know that menstruation occurs on a monthly cycle throughout female reproductive life. And menarche is the first menstrual cycle that normally occurs between the age of 11 and 15. And the menopause is that occurs between the age of 45 and mostly 55 years. The normal duration of a single cycle is about 21 to 35 days. Now next we'll talk about the hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis, that is HPG. So let's talk about it, that what is hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis in menstrual cycle and why it is very important for us to know about hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis. So the hypothalamus, as we all know that this is a master gland of our body. It regulates most of all the functions of the brain along with the human body. So the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary gland and gonads, that is ovaries, they work together to regulate the menstrual cycle. And gonadotrophin releasing hormone, that is GnRH, from the hypothalamus, it stimulates luteinizing hormone, that is LH, and another hormone is there, that is FSH. Now what is FSH? That is follicular stimulating hormone. They are released from the anterior pituitary gland, and the LH and the FSH are gonadotrophins. They act primarily on the ovaries in the female reproductive tract. Now we'll talk about the FSH, that is a very important hormone for the menstrual cycle. So FSH, that is a follicular stimulating hormone. It binds to the granulosa cells to stimulate the follicular growth. They permit the conversion of the androgens from the theca cells to the estrogens and stimulate the inhibition secretion. Another hormone, that is LH, that is a luteinizing hormone. This hormone acts on secretion of the androgens. And the menstrual moderate estrogen level exert negative feedback on the HPG axis, and high estrogen level, that is in the absence of progesterone, positively feedback on the HPG axis. And estrogen in the presence of progesterone exerts the negative feedback on the HPG axis, and inhibin, that is a type of hormone, it selectively inhibits the FSH at the anterior pituitary gland. So this was all about the hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis. Now next we'll talk about the ovarian cycle. Very important. So as you can see here on the screen, we have provided a diagrammatic picture of the ovarian cycle. Now let's start. Let's talk about it. The first phase of the ovarian cycle is the follicular phase. So the follicular phase marks the beginning of a new cycle as follicles. Now what are follicles? They are the oocytes which are surrounded by stromal cells. And these follicles begins to mature and prepare to release an oocyte. And at the start of a new cycle, that is menses, there is a little ovarian hormone production, and the follicles begins to develop independently of gonadotrophins, or simply you can say ovarian steroids. So due to the low steroid or the inhibin levels, there is a little negative feedback at the HPG axis, which results in an increase in FSH and LH levels, and these stimulates follicle growth and estrogen production. And only one dominant follicles can continue to mature and complete each menstrual cycle. And as the estrogen level rises, negative feedback reduces the FSH level and only one follicle can survive, with the other follicles forming the polar bodies. And the follicular estrogen eventually becomes high enough to initiate a positive feedback at the HPG axis. And the increasing level of the GnRH and gonadotrophins. However, the effect is only reflected in LH levels, or you can say LH surge. That is due to the increased follicular inhibin and selectively inhibiting the FSH production at the anterior pituitary. Now, the granulosa cells becomes luteinized and express receptors for the LH. So this is a follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. Now next is the ovulation. Now what is ovulation? So in response to the LH surge, the follicles ruptures and the mature oocyte is assisted to the fallopian tubes by the fimbria. Here it remains viable for the fertilization for around 24 hours. And following the ovulation, the follicles remains luteinized, secreting the estrogen and now also progesterone, and reverting back to the negative feedback on the HPG axis. This together with the inhibin stalls a cycle in anticipation of fertilization. So this is the ovulation phase of the ovarian cycle. The last phase of the ovarian cycle is luteal phase. Now what is luteal phase? So the corpus luteum, which is a yellowish body, is a tissue in the ovary that forms at the site of a ruptured follicle following ovulation. It produces estrogen and progesterone and inhibin. Now why it produces estrogen, progesterone and inhibin? Because to maintain the condition for the fertilization and implantation. So what happened? At the end of the cycle, in the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum spontaneously regresses after 14 days and there is a significant fall in the hormones, relieving the negative feedback, resetting the HPG axis, ready to begin the cycle again. And what happens if fertilization occurs? So in case if the fertilization occurs, the senescent trophoblast of the chorionic gonadotrophins, that is HCG exerting a luteinizing effect, maintaining the corpus luteum, and it is supported by placental HCG and it produces hormones to support the pregnancy. At about the 4th month of the gestation, the placenta is capable of production of sufficient steroid hormones to control the HPG axis. So this was all about the last phase of ovarian cycle, that is luteal phase. So here we are done with ovarian cycle. Now we'll talk about the uterine cycle. So let's talk about uterine cycle. The first phase of the uterine cycle is proliferative phase. So let's talk about it. So following the menses, the proliferative phase runs alongside the follicular phase, preparing the reproductive tract for fertilization and implantation. Now the estrogen initiates the fallopian tube formation, thickening of the endometrium, and increase the growth and the motility of the myometrium and the production of thin alkaline cervical mucus to facilitate the sperm transport. This is a proliferative phase. Now next phase of the uterine cycle is secretory phase. Now what is secretory phase? So the secretory phase runs alongside the luteal phase. Here the progesterone stimulates further thickening of the endometrium into a glandular secretory form. Thickening of the myometrium, reduction of the motility of the myometrium, and thick acidic cervical mucus production, which is a hostile environment to prevent polyspermy, and changes in the mammary tissues and other metabolic changes. So this is the secretory phase of the uterine cycle, and the last phase is menses. So menses marks the beginning of a new menstrual cycle. It occurs in the absence of a fertilization, and once the corpus luteum has broken down and the internal lining of the uterus is shedding. Menstrual bleeding usually lasts between 2 to 7 days and with 10 to 80 ml of the blood loss every month. So that's all in this video. We have discussed about menstrual cycle in an elaborated manner so that it becomes easy for you to understand what exactly is menstrual cycle. So that's all for today. See you guys in our next video. Till then, stay connected with us for more videos like this. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below, and yes, press the bell icon for more updates. Stay safe and stay healthy. And yes, thanks for watching this video.